Vorabur Tapadzian was once the most promising young man in the city of Van. Back in 1915, every man wanted to be him, every woman wanted to worry about him. Sky seemed the limit, and though he'd never been married into his early 20s, that didn't cause any suspicion. Everyone knew that he was going to be a shining example to his community. And then, of course, we don't like to talk about it much, but that whole genocide thing happened, and Vorabur escaped. He trickled through the Balkans and eventually landed in Niagara Falls, like many other survivors, where he went on to live a very successful life until just a few months ago he finally retired and decided, having been inspired by reading that book Family of Shadows, decided to visit his hometown again for the very first time. So he went to Yerevan, took a tour bus, which was crammed with people, with what seemed like an unjust number of fat women, and which seemed to take forever going through Georgia and through various other villages and hometowns of Western Armenia until it finally got to Van. And when Vorabur stepped out of that bus for the first time in 90 years, stepping foot into his hometown, nothing was the same. Nothing was the same. His favorite bakery was now a supermarket. The butcher shop of his youth was now a mosque. Barkev's bordello had become a Kurdish abortion clinic. He was exasperated. He spit on the ground. He threw his copy of Family of Shadows at a Turkish child, which made him feel a little better, but it just wasn't enough. And then suddenly, just as Vorabur was about to give up on memory, just as Vorabur was about to surrender memory, he noticed a vaguely familiar shack connected to the abortion clinic, and through its single window, there moved a slightly more familiar shadow. A shadow which, once it materialized in front of the door, had now become completely familiar as Goshenor, the shoemaker of Van, the shoemaker from Vorabur's time at Van before he escaped, and Vorabur couldn't believe it. He yelled out, "Goshenor! It's Vorabur! Do you remember me?" Now Vorabur, who seemed old 100 years ago, had now evolved into the very essence of ancient Armenian man. He had been hunched down, he had a long beard with dominoes all hanging from it, backgammon dice from his ears. One of his eyes, the left eye, had basically squinted entirely shut, always looking inward, always looking into the past, and possibly enlarging his right eye, which was not about to mistake what it saw before him. And he said, "Vai, pum mashallah, daras pum mashallah, vai, ich pardelas pum mashallah, inch lavatzades daras, inch lavatzades pum mashallah, daras pum mashallah, pum mashallah daras, inch lavatzades daras, inch lav dara, hayret panet sarkets daras." And Vorabur suddenly remembered that before he escaped on April 23, 1915, in fact, the very day he escaped, he had dropped a pair of shoes at Goshenor. And he says, "Goshenor, do you remember that I dropped a pair of shoes at your place?" And Goshenor says, "Ha, ha, 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 ha. Sirjakuinein, che, Sirjakuinein." And he didn't think of it until then, but those very words, those strange words, ignited the memory that in fact they were brown shoes. And Goshnov said, and again, Vorabur in disbelief suddenly remembered that yes, indeed, he wanted the soles to be flattened a bit. And Vorabur thought that yes, that is exactly what he wanted to have done to his shoes. And so Vorabur looks at him in awe and says, "Do you have these shoes?" At which point the shoemaker's left eye shuts completely. Chorek shapti badrast kalan.